a Canadian radio sanctuary podcast.
The SeaBus is 10 years old today. Charles Spratt is the director of the Marine Division. He started with the SeaBus in 1974, 3 years before it began.
We're with a small group from the Transit Service Division of the Department of Municipal Affairs. We were asked to look at the possibility of ferries as an alternative across Vancouver Harbor. It was determined that a transit ferry, such as we have here, would be a viable option at that time to a tunnel or a bridge. And I became in charge of the project from that point on and have remained with it ever since.
Had talk prior to 74 intensified as far as complaints about Second Narrows Bridge and Lionsgate Bridge and the traffic building and that sort of thing? Is this what has brought on this talk of tunnels and ferries in the first place?
Well, the need was recognized quite a time before that. In fact, the general needs were outlined in a report done by the GVRD, a study done by GVRD in 1971, which became known as the Kelly Report, which identified a lot of change that had to be made to public transportation generally and showed at that time a possible ferry route as one alternative to the North Shore. And the difficulty that we were having at that time was a glut of buses, really, on Lionsgate Bridge. And the first objective of SeaBus was to reduce the number of buses by half that were crossing Lionsgate Bridge.
Spratt says during a peak period, there was a bus going over the bridge roughly every 90 seconds, creating a downtown traffic jam. Captain Jack Pointer's been with SeaBus since September 1976, about 9 months before the vessel started their run June 17th of 77. He was involved in the sea trials, the test runs near Victoria.
In the harbor, outside the harbor, out towards Race Rocks in that area, Trial Island, just off Victoria. Basically putting them through tests for the architect because of the uniqueness of the vessels, just to see exactly what they had and, that they would fulfill all the design that they had incorporated in the vessels. They're a catamaran ferry, 400 seated passengers, flow through concept, and of course the key being the turnaround time. 400 off, 400 on, 90-second turnaround.
How many minutes does it take to get across?
Approximately 12 minutes. That'll vary a few seconds with opposing traffic.
Was it ever decided upon what the speed should be and how long it should take? In other words, should we make it go a little faster so we get across in 8 minutes instead of 12 minutes, or maybe we should slow it down a bit, or is it going full bore when it goes across?
No, the about 11.5 knots is service speed and provides a 15-minute service for the two vessels. To speed up, all you do is make a large amount of swell and spend more time in the terminals, and it's not really required.
Captain Pointer worked 28 years with the Ocean Cement's Marine Division as deckhand, mate, master, and then management just before joining SeaBus, which is 10 years old today. Happy birthday, SeaBus. With 10 candles on the cake, the two catamaran vessels have given Vancouver commuters and tourists smooth rides without a hitch. One of the reasons is the fine crew, which includes marine attendant Jennifer Bowes, who's been with the SeaBus since day one. She outlines her training.
Firefighting, which is, of course, they send you on for 5 days. First aid experience is an asset. Radio license certificate. That's pretty well it. And an ability to have a good rapport with the public as well as an asset.
What would your daily duties be then on the bus?
A terminal check is comprised of actually touring the terminal and the immediate vicinity, and we do fire checks, things like that. Just looking for anything that's amiss. And then we do ticket checks as well.
So you would be on the SeaBus with 3 others, is that right?
That's correct.
So what would you do in relation to what they're doing? I mean, do you all just sort of do your own individual things? Is there any area where you would sort of work together on one particular thing?
When you're based on the vessel, there's 2 attendants down below, and basically you're responsible for anything that occurs down below. And then there's the master and the mate up above. And basically, you just keep your eye on the passengers. In the event something happens, you notify the bridge and you deal with it accordingly.
Bose says last year's expo period was crowded but fun. The normal summer attendance of 14,000 passengers per day was bumped up to about 25,000 a day. This weekend, SeaBus rides are free as a part of the birthday celebrations. Saturday at 2 p.m. at Lonsdale Quay Public Market, the big birthday party is on. It's a big day for the harbor ferry service. 10 years ago, the two catamaran vessels began their regular daily runs. Skipper Judy Frew drives a SeaBus for a living. She says it's a lot different than other boats.
It doesn't have a rudder. It has 4 propellers with on a right angle drive, and the thrust is with those propellers, and there's not a wheel, as you can see. It's steered with these sticks, which coordinate the propellers.
Sort of like two joysticks in a way.
Yeah, that's correct. And the engines don't go in reverse when you want to slow or stop. You turn the 2 front propellers 180 degrees, so you've got reverse thrust on them.
What would what looks like a TV set, that monitor be there?
That's a radar. It's a really nice radar. It's a day radar, so in the daytime you can't see a conventional radar without putting a hood on it because there's too much brightness, but that's very bright. You can see it just by sitting there and looking into it.
I understand the running speed is, 11.5 knots? Is it set in such a way so that there's a governor or something that you couldn't go beyond that, or is that just where you keep it at 11.5?
It's capable of going faster. There are governors on the engine, so we don't go too fast.
If there was a small boat in the way or something, or a couple of big logs, how quickly can this vessel veer around that?
It's very maneuverable, extremely maneuverable. She can stop within her own length, and she turns very quickly because you can use all 4 of the propellers to your advantage.
When docking, the ramps to the SeaBus are lowered manually. After the SeaBus personnel speak through the intercom to the attendants down below at the terminal. Happy birthday, SeaBus. Johan Vegan is the manager of engineering for SeaBus. The harbor ferry service is 10 years old today, and Vegan's association goes back 11 years during the construction phase in Victoria. Vegan says there are only the 2 vessels. There's no backup ferry.
We actually plan maintenance as much as we can, of course, and hope we have no unscheduled breakdowns of any sort. And we have been very fortunate, and we have hardly missed any trips because we have very good people working here.
Is it constantly being checked over, or are there specific times in the week when it's looked at?
No, we have, should I say, an ongoing maintenance program. And naturally, the vessels are worked on out of service, basically, after 7 o'clock. And then we have 1 vessel available for service and maintenance from 7 o'clock Saturday night till 6 o'clock Monday morning, which we also then utilize for dry docking should that be necessary.
What type of engine is in there?
We have a V1271 GM for main propulsion, and for electric power we have 671 GMs.
Is that comparable to any other kind of harbor ferry in some other cities?
Well, they are quite commonly used in the industry, yes, on the coast.
Vegan says the SeaBus's watertight bulkheads make it unlikely that it will ever sink. About 103,000 liters of diesel fuel is used a month, or roughly 115 liters per hour by each vessel. The 10-year-old SeaBus service is relatively error-free, something that makes Captain Gary McRae proud. He's been there from the very beginning of the harbor runs. He says the 11.5-knot speed and 12-minute trips are due largely to allow for turnaround time and to offer 15-minute service to tie in with the bus schedules.
As well, we set up that when we first started, some of the businesses on both sides of the shorelines were complaining of the swell we are making, so we altered our courses to line up so that when we left the north terminal, that we'd head across at the Centerm dock, so any swell that we did make would dissipate on the big docks before we turned to come into our terminals.
On that very first day, you were on the night shift. Anything you recall as far as the festivities for the send-off?
Well, even before the official startup, we had been taking groups out, particularly school groups of children, on sort of trial runs and that, so a lot of the hoopla had sort of died down by the time the official 17th come up, although there was big festivities, that were going on for that whole sort of week.
I understand that as a part of the training, the SeaBus crews are very ready for any emergency.
Well, particularly the marine attendants that work on the passenger deck, they are all certified in firefighting. They have gone to the firefighting school and took a pretty comprehensive week's training, theory as well as practical, literally fighting fires. They're all licensed first aiders. A lot of them are industrial first aid. Others hold CPR tickets as well. So we're pretty well prepared for any eventuality.
At Lonsdale Quay Public Market this Saturday at 2 p.m., SeaBus birthday celebrations are on. All this weekend, SeaBus rides are free. SeaBus turns 10 today. A special day for Greater Vancouver, and especially the passengers and crew who ride the two vessels. A 7-year SeaBus veteran is skipper Judy Frew, who started as a marine attendant, did that for 4 years. She went to school, got the necessary mate's ticket.
Then I worked still as an attendant, but working in the wheelhouse on occasion when a skipper was on holidays or sick, something like that. And just this past year, it's been a year now that I've been full-time in the wheelhouse.
Are there many women doing what you do on the SeaBus?
There's one other. She works on the spare board also. I thoroughly enjoy the job on the SeaBus anyways. It's a really nice workplace. And I do enjoy working in the wheelhouse, much more so than down on the passenger deck.
So is it something, though, that does the routine ever become just that, a routine, or is there always something that gives it a little more interest each day?
No, I find it very stimulating. There's a lot of different traffic happening in the harbor, and it's always changing. I don't find it routine at all.
It's not being on the passenger deck so much anymore, but do you get any comments from people just generally about the SeaBus? They like it or they don't or whatever?
Oh, sure we do. We get a lot of positive feedback, especially during Expo, when we had a lot of visitors from out of town. We really did get a lot of positive feedback that they enjoyed the service and that it was quick and clean and just an enjoyable ride.
Frew says sometimes school groups come on board and go up top to the wheelhouse, only 3 or 4 at a time due to the cramped quarters. The SeaBus turns 10 today. The catamaran-style ferry travels at a speed of 11.5 knots for the 12-minute harbor crossing.
We determined that one of the crucial elements of success was its ability to load and unload very quickly, turn around very quickly.
Director of the Marine Division for SeaBus, Charles Spratt.
The size, 400 passengers, was determined by what we considered the North Vancouver bus system could deliver to the SeaBus in one flight of buses in one period of time. And that came to 300 plus, and then it was considered to be enough walk-ons around to fill the rest of the capacity to a 400 passenger ship. We also determined that it should be a high-frequency system rather than a heavy capacity system, because one of the difficulties of heavy capacity is the length of time it takes to accumulate a load, the length of time it takes to disperse the load on arrival, and the impact on the infrastructure when it gets there. If you offload 1,000 people in one charge, is the street system capable of handling that? So it had to be a transit ferry. So we applied rapid transit techniques to the philosophy of a SeaBus, then designed the catamaran, which is a very, very good hull, double-ended for that purpose.
How many SeaBuses are there? Just the two that go back and forth?
Just the two. The system is designed to be expandable. The terminals are capable of handling 10 ships, which would give us at one time an ultimate capacity of about 9,600 people per hour one way.
Charles Spratt says there have been 2 increases for the service in the past year. One stems from the building of Lonsdale Quay, and the other due to the SkyTrain connection. Some of the SeaBus crew come from the towboat industry. Captain Brian Marks is one of them. He started with SeaBus 10 years ago when the transit vessels first left the terminal.
Yeah, the majority of people that are working here as officers came from the towboat industry. The main reason for that was the harbor experience, is what the company and the harbor master was after at that time.
Do you enjoy it still?
Oh yes, 100%.
Another 10-year veteran is Captain Gary McCrae.
I was the one skipper that was on the night shift ferry on June 17th.
Now, what is your background?
Well, I originally joined the Navy when I was 17 to see the world, I guess, through the proverbial porthole. Did a hitch in the Navy. I was stationed back east at that time. And after my hitch in the Navy, I came out to the West Coast again where I was living and went into the towboat industry. I spent 14 years on the towboats in the capacity of deckhand, second mate, first mate, and master. And then when this system was starting up, I noticed the advertisements back in '76, and I sent in my resume and a letter to the company that was handling that at that time.
It isn't a perfectly straight course. Why does it zigzag a little bit in some areas?
Well, originally it was set up, we were going to run terminal to terminal on an 8-minute headway, but it was found that the service was better suited for a 15-minute turnaround with a 12-minute trip in each directions to coincide with the bus arrivals and departures.
McCrae says the curvy route is also to keep the 2 SeaBuses a good distance apart, especially during foggy conditions. As the SeaBus celebrates 10 years of smooth sailing, staff and passengers reflect on what the SeaBus means to them. Director of the Marine Division, Charles Spratt.
One of the ones you get from tourists is they have a feeling the whole thing is totally automated. The ships slip in and slip out so easily. The ramps are pretty well organized. The doors are pretty well organized, and they seem to think that someone somewhere is just pushing a button and the whole thing is doing it like an elevator. Comments we get from commuters are general satisfaction. We've had some objections to the noise levels on the ship, which is something we can't do much about right now. We haven't had a lot of adverse comment at all. It's been almost totally favorable. People are quite charmed by the system.
And some of the commuters.
I like it. It's fast. I like the old colors better because I'm also out on the water on occasion, and they were easier to see before.
What was it, bright orange, was it?
Yeah.
But it's handy, isn't it?
It's fast. It saves going all the way over to one of the bridges, and since I'm bussing it at the moment, yeah, it's fast.
Do you ride it regularly?
Every day.
Every day?
Every other morning.
How long have you been using it?
For the past year. I find it very, very efficient.
Did you used to drive to work downtown, or what?
No, I use the BC Transit system. But I find the SeaBus the best thing for me because I work on the North Shore, so that's the best way for me to get across.
Do you take the view and the scenery and all that on the water for granted now and read the paper on your way, or?
No, I look at the mountains every day. Every day, it's beautiful.
The impressive SeaBus system has been studied by transit officials from around the world. The SeaBus is 10 years old today. Captain Gary McCrae, nowadays steering operations from his office in the North Vancouver Administration Building for the Harbour's transit system, has been with the service since the original orange-colored vessels, they're now red, white, and blue, left the docks. He says as far as preparations for any on-board emergency, such as someone having a heart attack, the well-trained 4-member crew on each boat is ready.
Over the 10 years I've been here, I think we've run the true sort of cross-section of possible happenings, from epileptic fits to heart attacks to seizures and the like, and I like to look back on our record and reflect that I think we've done a pretty good job in literally saving people's lives in the course of events.
Okay. Any times when you were running the vessel when some, I don't know, famous people were on, or royalty or something like that?
Well, when we originally started up, there was a little more interest in it. We did have representatives from many governments throughout the world, particularly those involved with the transportation. They are right now working on a plan for New York City, where they're going to be starting the same kind of a system up, but I believe with 8 ferries right off the line. Turkey's another country that's starting up the same system. People from Rio had been here. Quite a few representatives of different countries that are involved in transportation because of the uniqueness and our ability to move people in such a rapid, efficient manner. This is one of the busiest harbors in North America, and we're running on a 15-minute schedule all day, and traffic, deep sea, and otherwise going in and out. You need that degree of maneuverability.
This Saturday and Sunday, all day, you can ride the SeaBus for free. It's part of the 10th anniversary celebrations for the SeaBus. The SeaBus is taken for granted now, but as the service celebrates its 10th birthday today, the director of the Marine Division, Charles Spratt, makes us aware of the line's efficiency and good safety record.
There was a lot of concern about a ferry running across the main route in the harbor. We have never had any difficulty there. In fact, at one time they had set some special rules that we would give way to all other traffic. It was determined in a very short period of time that wasn't necessary. In fact, it was confusing because other people weren't aware that we would give way. So we followed the normal rules of the traffic, rules of the road and traffic in the harbor. The other thing to consider is that in most marine collisions or accidents, it's been determined the safest way to meet a ship is at right angles, and we're running at right angles to most of the traffic, so it is the safest meet. We have on board all of the normal communication systems, radar, radios. We're listening on Channel 16. Our people are all harbor-wise people. So it's a very safe operation in that respect. No difficulty there. And the people who were concerned before we started no longer have any concern.
Big celebrations are planned this Saturday around 1:50 p.m. as the SeaBus carrying dignitaries reaches the halfway point en route to the North Shore. The vessel will make a 360-degree turn. Then, Stanley Park's 9 o'clock gun will fire. The bus will then carry on its way, joined by a flotilla of harbor boats. At 2 o'clock, there's a birthday bash at Lonsdale Quay Public Market, with speeches, cake, clowns, school bands, and a presentation to the 33 millionth passenger that will be reached on Saturday. All this weekend, SeaBus rides are free. Happy birthday, SeaBus. I'm John Oliver.